Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And I'm actually in Turkey at the moment, so a very different time zone. But good morning to everybody in US and the different parts of the world. And today we are doing a very exciting talk. We're going to talk with somebody who actually took their job and their profession and leveraged the AI and a similar type of new technologies and created an incredible career in a very short period of time. Rightfully so, she became Forbes 30 under 30, and she's an author and she's specialized on the real estate and architecture, where she took her profession and really leveraged AI and technology and became very successful. Today, we'll be talking about much more about the startups and next step of startups. If you find the funding, how to grow the company with the funding that's been established. Sandeep, are you there?
I certainly am. Murat, thanks for having me, and thank you for that introduction.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I'm looking forward to listening to your talk. Plus, I'd like to, I'm very curious about your adventure and that's happened in a very short period of time and amazing career that you developed. And I would like to hear that about the company, the Cove, and as a startup, how did you grow up? And looking forward to have a discussion at the end of the talk with you.
That sounds fantastic. Well, happy to kind of take it from here and kick some things off just as an overview for everyone contextually. Cove is a AI architecture company, so we are basically full cycle architects. We work on everything from multifamily to data centers to industrials. So we have studios and we have architects that do all kinds of buildings, but obviously the difference from something traditional is that we're significantly faster and the quality is significantly higher. And for developers, the speed is definitely the thing that makes a difference. So that's just super high level context on who we are. Just a little bit of context on how long we've been around. We've been around about 8 years now. So I thought that I'd pull together some slides and some thoughts around, things that I've found meaningful along the way. And, across this journey, we've raised about $37 million, to help scale parts of the startup and to help scale part of the technology. And I thought that, I'd share some things that I've learned that might be helpful for you as either you're raising capital or as you have raised capital, to kind of help you on that journey. So I'm going to go ahead and share a couple slides. So obviously, the thing that I almost always like to emphasize is to not get caught up in the post-funding trap. And I remember this, right? Because we went through, as we went through this journey, we were this bootstrapped company. And, it was like, I don't know, 5 of us when we were fully bootstrapped. And we raised our first seed round. And granted, that was a very small round, like, I don't know, like $1 million or something like that. And at that point, we went from having no funding to $1 million. That feels like a really big deal. And then when we went from that to, I don't know, like $5 million, that felt like a really big deal. And then from that to go to like another $32 million, that also feels like a big deal. And the only thing that I have found to be consistent across every single fundraise is to actually not immediately allocate the funds until you know. Over hiring before clarity is definitely a mistake that I have seen every founder make, myself included. I've definitely made that mistake before, not one that I will make again. And chasing too many maybes, right? Like until you know your entire business model, until you know exactly, okay, a dollar goes in here, a dollar spits out there. Until you know exactly what your capital is going to do, diluting focus across low conviction bets, it's just not worth it. because you're taking in all of that distraction. And lastly, mistaking cash for conviction. This is one that I've seen founders fall in the trap extremely often, is spending because you can, not because you should. It's like, well, what if? We got to take that bet. We must take that bet. I think that whole psychological thought around you must do it because you can is definitely something to fight against when you raise capital. Maybe not a popular advice, but I almost always believe that, like, let's say you had no capital or you had some capital and now you suddenly have access to significantly more funds. Your knowledge of what to do with those significantly more funds that happened, overnight, because the wire happens overnight, or over weeks when you were in your fundraising cycle, you haven't learned what to do with those funds overnight. And it still takes time to know exactly how to use those best over time. That's definitely one of the key things, the post-funding trap. And it links in very closely to our raise and restraint at Cove. This is definitely what we did. We preserved optionality. After we raised our round, we made the unconventional choice. We didn't spend it all immediately. And while other companies were in hiring frenzies, we preserved optionality. I wanted to raise and have access to capital, but chose measured burn over aggressive expansion. And we preserved that optionality for us. Until the customer signals were undeniably strong. Like, we created milestones across customer signals. And we're like, okay, when this happens, we unlock this additional few $1,000,000 of funding. When this happened, we unlock this additional few dollars of funding. And what that allowed us to do was create this breathing room to search, iterate, and know exactly when $1 goes in and the science behind how $1 pops out on revenue on the other end. And this restraint just retrospectively was mandatory for us. I'm so glad we did it, because it bought us time to pivot when the market conditions shifted. Speed without spine absolutely burns runway, and discipline without ambition, it stalls growth. And we needed both. I'll give you a very, very clear example. So the ground moved beneath us. When we raised our Series B round, we were building a software for sustainability analysis, and we were selling it to architects. And sustainability was a growing field at the time. And, people were buying the software, people were renewing the software. The metrics all looked great. NRR was beautiful. People were paying us more money each year, when they came back and renewed with us. And our feedback that we received from our customers was great. So obviously, after we raised our capital, we had all the clear signals. So we unlocked, some of that capital, brought on more sales team members, expanded the go-to-market motion, expanded the go-to-market spending, the team resourced it more, added more on the product team to add more features. What we learned about 18 months into that journey was that we ran out of TAM, the total addressable market, after we just sold aggressively over and over and over and over and over again. We sold it to everyone that could possibly buy that software. We got to the point where 7 out of every 10 folks, architecture firms, were using our software. That's a 70% market penetration. That is what I call we ran out of TAM. And we still hadn't scaled our revenue as huge as I wanted it to be able to IPO. So now I had a real challenge. We're out of a TAM in the vertical that we really understood and knew how to grow in. And we still weren't ready to IPO because our ARR wasn't huge enough. So what do? We started iterating. We started thinking about additional areas that we could grow into, additional sectors within the vertical, easy expansion paths. What else could we sell within the market that we understood so well? And that took a few iterations, and that took a few pivots. And that took some time. And our restraint earlier on gave us the time to find the iteration that worked. We went through 4 iterations to find the one that actually was scalable and had a big enough TAM. Obviously, it was the AI for architecture, which is scaling like crazy now. But it took us 4 other attempts that weren't scaling like crazy, that weren't good attempts. But we needed to learn that lesson. We had to make those mistakes. We didn't know that. And that's why I continue to focus back to the growth runway equation. The speed, it matters. It totally matters, right? Like, we're certainly not in an economy where it's speed at all cost. But speed paired with, good, strong, sustainable growth, which is basically runway math, that's pretty good. I think every decision needs to extend our time horizon to reduce the time needed to prove our hypothesis. And we're always proving a hypothesis, right? Like one of our board members, he always says, a startup is a hypothesis. It's an experiment that is yet to be proven. Because until you're at scale and profitable, it is a hypothesis. Can it be? Could it be? And that's exactly what at least what we raised capital for, is to prove out the hypothesis. So it's very simple, 3 things that I think matter most. 1, control burn through disciplined spending and efficient operations. We've talked about that. 2, decrease proof time, so accelerate learning velocity with clear hypothesis and kill gates. We've done that, right? Like we got to a point where we were so good at running iterations and tests that we were starting to run, I would say, 1 per quarter. And I think that's probably as fast as we could get. And we were able to run many of these iterations simultaneously to save time, because again, burn happens all the time. So the quicker you can test and see if something works or not work, you're reducing the cost, or the cost of that particular experiment. And that's exactly what we were focused on. And obviously, once you have figured it out, focusing on healthy revenue, not just any revenue. The margin contribution totally matters. Obviously, the math keeps changing as the market keeps changing. There was definitely, I think we've all probably seen the study where it was like, oh, Uber had no unit economics, but look, they're so huge. They totally are. But I will point out, today's a different time than it was when they were scaling. And we buy time by reducing burn and by improving the contributed margin. And that, at least for us, created strategic freedom. It created the ability to pivot, to experiment, and then finally win. Without that ability, this would have been really not just hard, impossible. I think about every dollar in terms of the three key things, right? It's either the foundations, right? Like, what are you basically spending majority of your 50 to 60%, what you must spend to stay alive, right? Like core engineering, reliability, security, support infrastructure. It's basically the non-negotiables. And then it's the accretive growth. That's the ICP focus, go-to-market, product investment that will help improve unit economics and retention. And then, 10, 15% small capped bets. These are new wedges, R&D, spikes, market trust, and all with fast kill gates. The kill gates, I must say, is the most important thing to establish before taking any bet. Because if you don't have your kill gate and strict time boxes, those are definitely ones that can get founders who are clearly all passionate people, right? Like I definitely have been there. You just feel like, well, just a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more. That's just not a good idea. So defining your kill gates before taking any bet is definitely the way to go. But this is typically how I would like to think about how you're spending the money that you've raised. If you see that most of your capital is on option bets, I would mark that as a key concern. If you look at 50, 60% is on option bets, then there's some serious challenges about how you're spending your money. And maybe you need to not be spending that much. That's a pretty clear signal in my mind anyway. And it's right, scenario planning. I love scenario planning. Move fast, but don't commit blindly. Speed without structure is chaos, and absolutely every initiative needs explicit decision criteria before you start, not after you've burned tons of runway. So actually go through this exercise, which is exactly what we do now. State the hypothesis. What is the very specific thing that we're testing? Okay. What customer behavior validates it? So for us, we were testing, does the market want AI-powered architecture? Yeah. What customer behavior validates it? We actually had very clear validation criteria. Do they buy from us? Can we create revenue? Because there's no better indication than, yeah, they signed the contract. So that validated it for us. 2, define leading metrics. Which early indicators will prove or disprove the bet within weeks? So for me, revenue certainly came not within weeks, it came within months. So within weeks, how would I know this is even working? It was, okay, for every conversation that I have with a qualified customer, how many move to the next meeting? And how many are like, yes, I want to talk to you again because this is valuable to me? Am I chasing the customer or is the customer chasing me back? That, I think, is a really, really clear proof point, at least it was for us, to understand if what we were selling, the market found value in. Because I might think it's valuable, but, well, it's almost irrelevant what I think. It's all about what the person who's spending the money, i.e. the customer, thinks that matters. And we, for AI architecture, got very early signal that the market was extremely interested. 7 out of every 10 people we spoke to booked their next meeting and wanted to have that next conversation and wanted to talk about their project and take it to that next step. That's unheard of, which is why we knew we were on to something really big. 3, set budget and time caps. So no exceptions, no extensions without explicit review. We totally set up a budget. It was a kind of a ninja team. It was like within the ELT, the executive leadership team, we kind of created this ninja team, to go explore this without distracting the rest of the org. And we gave ourselves 3 months to explore it without distracting the rest of the org. And based upon those results, we would determine what to do with the rest of the org. And we found so much early success that it was clear we needed to pivot the entire organization to this. And that's exactly what we did. And obviously, create your kill criteria. If we miss X by Y week for Z weeks, we stop. And you have to decide that up front. You must. It's impossible to decide after. The other thing, obviously, that comes with raising capital is scaling the people, right? Like, obviously, at one point, we scaled all the way up to 85 people. And I think that's the largest that we grew to. And obviously, we've gotten significantly more efficient since then, thanks to AI. We're only 30, 40 people now. It's just because we can do so much more with fewer people. We don't need that many people anymore. But the thing to note is that when you're growing the people count, you really have to think about the processes of how these folks talk to each other, who owns what. Because obviously in the early days, everyone owns everything because you're all probably sitting in the same room or talk all the time or know everything about everything at all times because you're like under 5, you know everything. There's not much to figure out. But when you get to about 15, yeah, you need some disciplined ownership. Everyone can't wear 10 hats. Maybe each person wears 3 hats. When you get to about 30, you need slightly more defined roles. Again, everyone's maybe not wearing 3 to 5 hats. Maybe everyone's wearing 1 to 2 hats, preferably one for the majority of the org. Maybe some leadership is wearing 2 hats, but that's probably the end of it. If you find yourself at that size, at that 30-person size, 30, 35, 40, and you see that most everyone is doing 2 to 3 jobs, it's not clear enough. Then you need to define the workflow a little bit better, because all that means is that you're just being inefficient, because folks just get done when they're focused on the thing that they're working on. At least that's what I have found. And focus beats force every single time. So reconfirm your market focus. We learned the hard way that the TAM for the market that we started out with was too small. We thought that every single person in an organization would use our software. We learned that actually it was only the sustainability focused people that would use our software, and that was a much smaller TAM than we originally had anticipated. So continue to retest your assumptions over and over and over again with data. And definitely priority level urgency, not nice to have features. Don't build things that won't unlock sales, won't unlock retention. And willingness to pay can only be ever defined by a customer. So don't imagine it and try to match something to this imagined number. Listening to the customer will teach you more than anything else ever will. At least that is the other one thing that I have definitely learned over the last few years, is that the customers will tell you. You have to be willing to listen and ask. And obviously having distribution accesses, so having great channel partners, that can be a really great unlock and defensibility flywheel. How is someone else not going to do this? This is especially true now for software in particular, because any software can be recreated, right? Like with Cursor, with Bolt, with Copilot. I mean, you could try to recreate any software. I think just recently I was looking at some demo of a Adobe lookalike software that was basically open source and completely AI enabled, that group of people just built over, I want to say, a weekend or something like that. So really thinking about what that moat is especially critical. So in my mind, the 3 takeaways from capital to durable growth is buy time and earn time. So extend runway through disciplined burn, earn strategic freedom by improving unit economics. And that particular option creates optionality when the market shifts. 2, portfolio allocation with real gates. Treat capital as a portfolio. Foundations accretive, and capped option bets. Kill fast when signals don't materialize and don't make exceptions. And focus and compounding create durability. So durable growth, it absolutely comes from retained, expanded, high margin revenue and markets where your advantage compounds. Everything else, and I mean it, everything else is noise. So restraint, it gave us the options, and iteration found us our wedge, and discipline turned fresh capital into sustainable, durable growth. And I hope it can do the same for you. But that's everything I brought with me to share. I wanted to kind of go back onto the live session, see if there were any thoughts, any questions, but those were just a few slides.
Yeah, there was a question here with Valerie is about the team scalability and how to be able to not grow too fast and be able to maintain that structure but without really overgrowing the org.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have so much potential now, specifically with AI, to truly rethink every hire that one makes. I'll give you an example. So most recently, one of the things that our sales team does is outbound, right? Like reach out to people, cold outreach, to try to create new opportunities, to try to understand what's working, what's not working. And we wanted to increase the number of people that we were reaching. And obviously, the one way to do it is to put more bodies, right? Like hire more people, train them, and then be like, hey, now you call them. That's how we'll have more. That's how we'll have more quantity. The other way to do it is, well, okay, how is the current team using their time? Okay, this is how they're using their time. They're all spending 2 hours on this meaningless research that AI can completely automate. If we gave our entire current team 2 hours back into their day, can we not hire now and just push it off and still get to the outcomes that you want? Those are the questions that I would encourage everyone to ask before making any hires. And obviously, once you do determine that, maybe you do need a hire, I think it's very critical to define exactly what the goal and purpose of that hire is going to serve. If it's on sales, it's like, okay, they better be achieving this metric. If it's on product, they need to build that thing. I think it needs to be very, very clear when hiring what that group of hiring or that singular hiring is going to serve to the org's goal of growing revenue in a sustainable fashion. Because if you can't tie it, you probably don't need that hire.
Yeah, I like your slide about the team scaling. I like the numbers because it's kind of how I describe to startups, etc. Or me saying that think about this is like a kid, as you're describing. 1 to 5 people is like a toddler, 1 to 5 years old. Easier to control. You know what they're gonna eat, what they're gonna touch. But at the moment they go to school, you start losing control, and you need to be much more structured and know it. So as it goes along, it becomes very much like a human life. It becomes much more complex. So I really like the way you described it in there, how to scale, and it's easy when to up to 5 people because you are so close and you wear so many hats and you're comfortable. So I would like to change a little bit on the concept. One of the things that I speak with a lot of startups is trying to explain to them that money is given to you not because of your structure or your organization, because it doesn't exist yet. So they have no clue about that. They like your idea, they like the business model, etc. But how do you get that knowledge and mentorship, I would say, about building an organization that scales?
Yeah, most definitely. I will say that there's no silver bullet. It's it's likely a little bit of everything, right? Like, so for me, I live here in Atlanta, and
Mm.
over the last few years of growing my company, I have continued to get support and mentorship from founders who are ahead of me, founders who have exited, founders who have significantly larger companies, and preferably finding folks that are just one step ahead of you helps you know what to do from now to then. And I do think that just having open, honest, candid discussions with folks, if you are able to, create and nurture those relationships, is extremely meaningful. Obviously, many times the capital will come with board members as well. The investors,
Yes.
I think they can also be a really strong they can be a really strong resource because they are seeing it across their portfolio and different companies and what's working and what's not working. I think it's perfectly okay to ask questions and thoughts off of your board. They're not going to think, oh, you're not smart. Why did I ever give you money? Because you're asking them questions. If anything, it continues to build that collaboration and grows the trust, which is essential.
Point on. Thank you. And I think it's a first-hand experience that is really shows how you leverage those resources. The other thing that I really like on your presentation, that you described it very well, that a lot of people don't realize, is making sure that the demand of the service or the product that you are providing is proportional to the investments that you are receiving, and the marketplace that you were saying that you got stuck in there. So it's important that if you can describe yourself as a one-trick pony, that's great. But then you need to make sure that you manage the investments. And you decided to open up certain parts of the organization to new thought process. Could you expand a little bit on that to be able to grow that demand or create different services related to the original idea?
Yeah, for sure. Um, so obviously the very early stage investors, right, like your seed, even Series A, I would imagine, they're not investing necessarily in your business model. Sure, it matters, or your product. Of course, it matters. It's critical.
Hmm.
They're investing in your ability as a founder to figure it out,
Yep.
because every person at that stage assumes that there will be some roadblocks. You probably will have to do some pivot, maybe multiple pivots to get to, billion dollar, multi-billion dollar scale to lead to an extremely exciting exit for them. That's at least my takeaway from every conversation that I've ever had. And because that is true, I will say that your ability, it's less about org structure. It's almost less about anything else. It's about your ability to iterate and change and be, extremely greedy with the resources that you do have access to make them go the as far as possible. So in particular, your question about being able to test and iterate while not distracting the rest of the org, I think that's entirely possible, right? Like, especially given the org size. I think that would be extremely hard to pull off, maybe with like an org under 10 people, because there's just such few people. But probably if you're at least 10, 15 people, I don't know, maybe 1 to 2 people are exploring the different idea. If you have uncovered some challenges, it's probably yourself as the founder plus someone else who is supporting you to go explore something. Because if the rest of the stuff is mostly figured out, it can kind of be running while you go run some tests, you go get some learning, you go figure out a new value prop, you go figure out a new market. And to me, that's kind of that, like your stealth ninja team to see
Hmm.
what works and what doesn't.
Great. So you also mentioned very much about plan versus reality. I mean, running a larger organization is quite a lot of times the founders are not experienced with, and the organization becomes 30 people, 40 people. It comes with a lot of different roles and responsibilities. As you said, people are not shuffling their hats any longer. They're specialized on one area or maybe two, as you were saying it. But so, how do you, as a founder, plan versus reality of a large organization?
I'll say for me in particular, it was with a lot of pain and learning in a relatively short amount of time. But more importantly, the thing that I can say without a doubt now is that it's about, again, not wearing a million hats. Even as a founder, at some point you need to stop wearing a million hats. I can't be the head of product and the head of sales and the head of HR and the head of, I don't know, people ops. Like, it can't all be just me alone. Because if I ultimately am owning every aspect of everything, that all that tells me is that I have not hired good leaders. And I
Hmm.
have not, if I have hired great leaders, I have not empowered them. And I think that hiring great leaders for kind of, each different vertical within the organization, and then building that trust with the leadership team and empowering them is definitely the only way to get to any kind of scale that's beyond 10, 15 people and not be having heartache all the time.
Great advice. Um, I would like to ask, so your company is, the Cove is about 8 years old. So what was the most painful decision you had to make as a founder in that last 8 years, or a couple of them, if you want to give an example?
Well, it's definitely an easy one for me. I'm definitely a greenie at heart, someone who cares deeply about sustainability. It was extremely hard for me to come to the realization that I live in a world where people don't care about sustainability in a way that they're willing to spend money on it. Um, and I had to pivot entirely away from that side of the business. I think that was the hardest call.
And this is as you're saying. So you're passionate about something, and it's your baby. You're growing it, and you want to take it to that direction. And it's a very tough decision. And thank you for sharing that with us. I think this is a very valuable aspect because at the moment a company becomes a large company like that, you need to start making very tough decisions. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to change your strategies or your opinions and adapt to that because a lot of people very idealistic when you're a small company, but it's not the same when you're a large company. Thank you for that insights. That's great.
Sure.
So I'm not seeing any other questions in there. Let me know if I'm missing anything. So um, I'm a startup person and I got my funding. We are 1 to 5 people. Um, what is the like? As soon as I got my $1 million, all right, as a funding, what would you say the next steps? The number one thing that I should be doing?
Okay, well, let's go back. All right, you have your $1 million.
5 people,
Yep, you have
great
five
idea.
people. Great. So when you're actually that small, you probably have a very clear idea of what you want to do with your $1 million, because by then your product is still in MVP form, so you already know the features you need to build. And the first thing that you're going to do, obviously, is make sure that you can get those features built. And if that requires people investment, then you may hire some people. Or maybe you can pull it off, just with better tools and retraining your software team on vibe coding or what have you, so they can move faster.
Hmm.
Um, you probably already, you're probably the one doing all of your calls right now, or all of your customer interactions. I think actually that's a really, really good thing for the founder to do for as long as possible, which I think you can pull off typically even up until you're like 10ish people. But you may bring on more people to set up meetings for you, because that's just grunt work that you don't need to do. That can be helpful. um, you might think about, I don't know, you probably don't have a head of sales by now, but I would think strongly, depending on exactly what it is that you sell and exactly how your market works, who that first executive is that you want to bring on. So for some orgs, it's head of sales. For other orgs, it's head of marketing. For yet other
Good.
orgs, it's head of customer success. So really think through what is the thing that will make the value tick for the customers based on what it is that you're trying to prove. And you're probably hiring your first executive who is going to help you just as much as you're their boss and you're helping the executive grow. They're helping you grow too, because they've done it with other folks.
Um, Great. And I'm just checking the questions if there's anything else. Well, there's a little bit an earlier stage, but the question: what is the ideal way to go about raising capital for the new startup?
I mean, I think everything, right? Like apply to startup battles and competitions, apply to pitch offs, go meet investors, go stalk them at conferences. I don't think cold outreach works really well, so maybe don't do that, because spam filters are pretty good these days. So
Okay.
I would say try to make that in person connection happen at as many touch points as possible.
Okay, great. I'm not seeing any more questions on there. Oh, sorry. One more question. A new product lead, B2C product. I found team alignment really hard once we start growing. How did you keep PMs, design, and engineering connected efficiently as Cove scaled?
That's definitely a hard one. I'll say it was definitely with short sprints with very, very clear allocation. So, we used whatever you use, whether it's Trello or Monday, whatever it is that you use to manage kind of your cycle, just having
Mm-hmm.
very clear owners for different parts of the process and creating clear SLAs around, okay, once you're assigned to this particular thing, you have a 24-hour, 48-hour SLA to respond to it by this time. So that just kind of gets that motion going. And if you're attaching the owner, I know that's super tactical advice, but I think it's a super tactical question because I
Yes,
think it's all
exactly.
entirely on the workflow. It's
Yeah,
not any philosophical alignment. It literally is like, are you using the right tools to make sure people know what they're supposed to do, because they are not connected when they don't know what they're supposed to do.
great. Um, Last but not least, I'm not seeing any other questions coming up. You said in if you knew what you know now and the experience that you had 8 years ago, how fast do you think you could have come to this stage in the Cove business?
That's a really hard one, specifically because I had to go through such a major pivot. I think I really would have still taken some time to properly watch sustainability get crushed down in the world that we live in, um, to arrive here. I do think I would have gotten there significantly faster. I'd say not even just 4 years. It would have been at least like two. Like it would be a
Okay.
quarter of the time. Just because I already know the trends that I'm looking for. I'm a lot less just hope and faith and a lot more let's actually look at the data, which is how at least I started. I don't know if that's how other founders started. You just have a lot of hope, faith paired with ambition, right? Because
Yes.
you're starting from zero. You need hope and faith to get your first
Yeah.
customer and your second and your third.
Yep. And I think your point is very valid to learn from other founders and experiences, etc. That becomes very valuable, as you indicated now as well. That if I knew certain things, it would have been faster and different than as today. Well, thank you very much, Sandeep. It's been excellent and great discussion here. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to see the video. And thank you for Glorium Technologies for allowing to do this discussion. Would you like to say a couple of words to close the conversation?
No, just thanks, Murat. This was an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone has a great Friday.
Yeah. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.